everyone, and welcome to another casual review. We are finally wrapping up our Metroid marathon by talking about Metroid Fusion. Out of all of the Metroid games, I feel like Metroid Fusion is the only one with any real plot, especially in continuation of the series. And because of that reason, I'd say if you are going to play any Metroid game before Metroid Dread, I would recommend playing through all of them because they are such phenomenal games. But if you are only going to play one, I would say play Metroid Fusion because the plot seems to set up a lot of stuff that I feel like will be continued on in Metroid Dread. So the plot is we go back to planet SR388, and for those of you who are keeping track, that is where Metroid Samus Returns takes place. I feel like we are just jumping back and forth between these two planets, Zebus and SR388. So if we are going by that pattern, maybe Metroid Dread will take place back on planet Zebus. However, this doesn't necessarily, as far as the gameplay goes, it doesn't take place on the actual planet itself. It kind of takes place on a space station that is hovering around the planet. But like I said, this has the most plot of any Metroid game, so it really sets up this whole scene at the beginning where Samus and these Federation soldiers are exploring the planet because they are gathering up a bunch of data on the planet and even some creatures to study. And while they are on planet SR388, a mysterious parasite infects Samus's suit, and this is later called Parasite X. And it is like this yellowy, blobbish thing that basically just infects a living host and then consumes them and actually can like transform into that being. I hope I'm explaining that correctly, but this Parasite X gets to Samus, and basically her suit gets like fused to her skin. It is very troubling when you think about it, and so we have the top surgeons of the Federation try to take off her suit, and they are able to take off a lot of it, but they aren't able to take off all of it. So in this way, Samus kind of gets a redesign. However, just taking off as much of the power suit as possible doesn't get rid of this Parasite X that is destroying her body. So, like many times before, the Metroid larva that was introduced in Metroid Samus Returns, it's dead now. It's at the beginning of this game, so I don't think it's really spoilers, but it is dead, and yet it is still helping Samus because the DNA extracted from that Metroid larva is used to create a vaccine. So now Samus, she is fused with her suit, and she is also part Metroid in a way. She has the Metroid DNA inside her. So this is why she gets like a whole new redesign. She is in a blue suit, the fusion suit as it is so often called. I finally understand the after credits scene in Metroid Samus Returns where you just get a little glimpse of this Parasite X. And I remember when Samus Returns first came out, everyone's like, oh, the after credit scene is really cool, you gotta see it. And then when I saw it, I had no idea what was going on. It's because that is a reference for things to come in Metroid. This also gives a very logistical reason why Samus lost all of her abilities from the previous Metroid game, and it frequently references these abilities because the power suit that was taken off of Samus then became its own form. So basically, you are playing as a starter Samus in the beginning of a Metroid game against an end level Samus at the end of a Metroid game, and it is such a cool dynamic because by the end of all the Metroid games, you feel so strong and powerful, like nothing can stop you. But imagine going against that as the Samus that was just starting out in the game. It's such like a dauntless task. Like it feels so dangerous because Samus, when she's all powered up with her power suit, is very, very scary, and that's not something that I want to encounter. So playing throughout this game in particular, you have to, it doesn't happen too often, maybe like 4 or 5 different segments, but you kind of have to like sneak around this new Parasite Samus, and because if you come across this Parasite Samus, then it will absolutely destroy you. And so it is kind of a stealth game, and I know I complained about this in Metroid Zero Mission, the end part of that game, like after you beat Mother Brain. I didn't like playing the stealthy sections against the space pirates because you're playing as Zero Suit Samus during that game, and I didn't like that, but I think it actually really works in this game because it is only in small little chunks. It's not like the whole like section of the game trying to dodge around Samus. It's only little bits at a time, and so you always get this presence of this parasite Samus walking around, but it doesn't intrude on your gameplay that much. It's only in very choreographed sections. This game seems to reference a lot of past events in the Prime games. At least that's what I'm assuming, because I have not played the Prime games, but I played the other 3 Metroid games that chronologically take place before this. Even Samus herself has this like inner monologue while she is riding in elevators, or when she is talking to her computer. We'll get more into that in a second, but she references characters like Adam, or she'll say like, oh, this is the second time I've had to take orders from a computer. And so, one, this is the most we've ever heard Samus say or think, because she does both. But 2, I feel like maybe I would have benefited from playing the Prime games, but I don't feel like it was absolutely necessary. It's just so I could pick up on those little references that she often thinks. Now, Samus, under conditions of the Federation, because they're not quite sure the effects of this parasite that is still living inside her, of this like Metroid vaccine that's going, I don't know, she's just this whole DNA soup right now. So they're not too sure about what her actions are going to be. And so she basically has to be supervised by this computer that is in her ship. And so this is another reason why I feel like Metroid Fusion is kind of the black sheep of the 2D Metroids. All this plot, all of this monologue and dialogue, and you just have to constantly check in with this computer in order to get your next mission, your next waypoint on where to go next. And so this computer will give you the orders, and then it will show you on your map where in this floating space station you need to go next. Because of this whole checking in with the computer system, it kind of makes this game not that exploration based. It feels more handholdy than the previous 3 Metroid games, just because you like see exactly what room you're supposed to go into next. Granted, there's still a lot of exploration, and I would even go as far to say that there's a lot more reliance on hidden walls in order to progress further into the main story. Every Metroid has hidden walls. That's just common knowledge that there are hidden walls hidden throughout the worlds of Metroid, but most of these hidden walls lead to upgrades like additional missile capacity, additional super bomb capacity, that kind of stuff. In this one, I felt like it relied on hidden walls in order for you to actually progress through the story. Like, you kind of hit this wall, and unless you find exactly where these hidden walls are, you cannot progress. And sometimes it would stump me, and I admittedly would have to look things up eventually. Not too often, but a lot more than all of the other Metroid games. The bosses are a lot different than the previous 3 Metroid games as well. I felt like playing through these first 3 Metroid games, it was just a matter of who could whittle down whose health fastest. So you would find the weak point on the big boss, and you would just try to hit that area over and over again. I felt like the bosses in this game actually took a little bit more strategy, a little, dare I say, more like Dark Souls, where you have to find each of the boss's gimmicks and movesets and navigate accordingly rather than just trying to hit that weak spot over and over again. It wasn't uncommon for me to die at least 2 or 3 times against a boss because I was just trying to learn its moveset, and it is a little more stingy as far as health goes as well. So you can't just mindlessly get hit over and over again thinking that you'll whittle down the boss's health first. You actually do have to think about dodging their moves as well. I noticed in terms of enemies that there are a lot of repeats of enemies from Metroid Samus Returns as well, which makes perfect sense because they have taken these creatures from planet SR388 and brought them up on their ship, and then these Parasite X's are choosing to use these creatures' forms, and so it would make sense that there's a lot of repeats from that particular game, because all the other Metroid games that I played took place on planet Zebes. There are some creatures that do make a reoccurrence from Super Metroid, however, and it is the little animal friends that kind of show you how to use your moves in order to traverse, like abilities that you didn't know that Samus had in Super Metroid, like the green ostrich looking thing, or those weird alien looking monkeys that taught you how to wall jump. I think it was really cool that they made a reoccurrence, and they actually play not like a huge role in the game, but they do play a role, and I am very curious because it is very possible that they do make a reoccurrence in Metroid Dread as well, for reasons that I'm not going to quite go into here, just because of like spoilers of Metroid Fusion or whatever, but it is possible, I will say that. Another reason why this game is different than the other three are your missiles. Now, all the other Metroid games, you have two different missiles. You have your regular missiles, and then you have your super missiles that do triple the amount of damage. In this game, your missiles just automatically get upgraded into super missiles, so it's kind of surprising because they really limit your super missiles in previous Metroid games, and in this one, as you accrue all of the Metroid inventory capacity upgrades, all of those suddenly become super missiles. So it's just like, hey, if you really want to give me 150 super missiles, that's fine with me. Another change that they did to the missiles are they have added ice powers. So in the other Metroid games, Samus's regular shots would do ice powers, but they kind of justify it in this game saying like, hey, the Metroid DNA inside you can't handle your suit being embedded with ice powers. However, we can give your missiles that ice ability. So they add a little variance there as well. Now, in previous Metroid games, progress from moving on through the main story is impeded by Samus's power suit's abilities. So you aren't able to, say, progress to a certain room until you have her little swing, her little chain. I'm not sure the name of the power suit ability, but in order to like swing from the roof, you have to acquire that upgrade before you progress. And this game certainly has progress being impeded until you unlock certain things, but it really likes to rely on door security as well in order to impede your progress until later. So you'll be playing and you'll encounter a green door, and the green doors will not open up for Samus. In previous games, you just think to yourself, okay, I need the super missile, shoot the super missile at the green door, then it will open. In this game, you have to go to certain security terminals as you're playing throughout the game, and it will say, okay, now you got clearance to open up green doors. And I just feel like this is a lazy way to impede progress, and it isn't very exciting compared to getting new abilities. When I started playing this game, I wasn't feeling that high on it as far as motivation goes, and it's kind of funny because this has been my reaction playing through all of these Metroid games, because I am playing these back to back. So you got to consider, when I am at the end of a Metroid game, I am at that state where I am super strong, I have the screw attack unlocked, the gravity suit, I can fly everywhere, I'm invincible, and then every time I start a new Metroid game, I have to start from scratch. At the beginning, I am weak, and this was no exception. I was playing as weak Samus after playing super strong, overpowered Samus from Super Metroid, and so I felt that same way. But when I reached the end of this game, I just had a big old grin on my face. I am just so hyped for the next game. I'm glad I was able to play through all of these Metroids during my marathon. I adore all of these games, and I think they are all phenomenal. Just because this was a different take on Metroid, it's kind of going into a different direction, it didn't mean that it was bad. I still had a wonderful time playing it. So yeah, all of these games, including this one, I will give a 5 out of 5. You can't go wrong with any of these Metroids. Now, before I wrap this casual review up, it's kind of become tradition that I tell you how long it took me to play through these games and my completion rate of each one. So this one, it took me 3 hours and 32 minutes to beat, and I had a low collection rate of only 54%. That is significantly lower completion rate than any of the other Metroid games that I played through. Normally, I'd vary between 60 and 70% on those. So it was pretty low here, and I felt like I got most of like the energy tank capacity, and most areas on the map said that I had gotten all the items on them. So there is still potentially a ton of extra hidden walls here, and I think I would have really benefited from some kind of pulse scan in this game, especially if there's that many hidden rooms. So if I was to rate these all, if you put a gun to my head and said, hey, you have to rank all 4 of the Metroid games leading up to Metroid Dread, what order would you put them in? I feel like I'm going to offend lots of people by saying this list, because I feel like every Metroid game is someone's favorite Metroid game. And I just want to remind you guys that I think these are all 5 out of 5 excellent games. In order, I think that the best Metroid game that I have played so far is Metroid Zero Mission. It just had that perfect balance of exploration and direction and gameplay. It's just mwah, like chef's kiss. Best Metroid game. Now, number 2 is kind of controversial because this is the only one that I don't think is anyone's favorite Metroid, would be Metroid Samus Returns. I felt like the modern takes and the quality of life improvements that were added just made this game so playable and enjoyable. It doesn't hurt that this was my first Metroid game I've ever played through. Number 3, I would put as Super Metroid. This is like on the total other end of the spectrum in terms of exploration and no guidance and just kind of wandering and taking your time and absolutely no direction given to you. And that can be a big plus for a lot of people. And I feel like if I gave myself maybe a little more time to play through these games, I might enjoy this one more. It might place higher on the tier list. But as of right now, I felt like just because it was so dated mechanically, I will put this is a good 3 out of 4. And this leaves Metroid Fusion, still a 5 out of 5 game. I still think it is a wonderful game, and I think it has a lot to bring to the table, especially in terms of lore, which I do kind of like a lot of lore in my Metroid game, kind of to know what's going on. But as far as the gameplay goes, I felt like it was maybe too linear for its own good. Like, Metroid Samus Returns still has you moving progressionally from like section to section, but at least within those sections you are wandering and exploring. In this one, it just tells you exactly where to go, and I just felt like maybe it took things a little too far in terms of a narrative linear game. Normally I would very much appreciate that, and I still do here to a degree, but I felt like when really thinking like what makes a Metroid game, I think this one falls on the bottom of my list. Well guys, that's it for me. Looking forward to Metroid Dread. I did a little bit of research because I pre-ordered the Switch OLED, the Amiibo, and the game through Target, and it looks like they are shipping that this Friday. So I don't think I'll be getting this on Friday. It says between next Sunday to Wednesday, so I might be waiting a while. I'll just be sitting there envious of all of you guys who get to play Metroid Dread this coming weekend. But I'd love to hear your experience during your Metroid marathons and any other thoughts and opinions you have about Metroid Fusion or the Metroid series. I'd love to hear from you guys. Otherwise, I'll talk to you later. Bye!